start here by reading about the little horn, just to set. I want to set some. I want to frame this because I'm not really going to do a reaction video today. It's going to be more listening to the Prince of Iran talk about what's going on in Iran. And I want you to be aware of the most likely candidates for the little horn in Daniel 8. So let's go over and read Daniel 8. Yeah, let's do this. Over here to Daniel 8. It's not that long. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. I saw in the vision, and it so happened while I was looking that I was in Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and there was standing beside the river was a ram, which had 2 horns. So, see, this is where some of the earliest records we have about nations and horns, and you're going to see how they're interpreted here, so that we can take what we learned from Daniel here and apply it to Revelation 13. That's one of the reasons why, we consider that a beast represents a government and horns represent leaders. It's from sections like this. So, by a river was a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high. But one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no animal could withstand him. Nor was there any that could deliver from his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth. Interesting. Without touching the ground. Flying goats. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him. But he cast him down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. Okay, so overwhelming force. Therefore the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it 4 notable ones came up towards the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn. This here is what most people are referring to when they say the word Antichrist in reference to the end times. And I wish people would just use the words that are written, because it would avoid a lot of confusion, and it would help people actually see all the full picture. I gave an example today of people who use the word Antichrist in places where it's not written. So if you insert the word Antichrist here, you're doing a huge disservice. Imagine you had a basket of fruit that has all manner of fruit in it: apples, bananas, oranges, grapes, maybe even some lemons and some limes and blueberries and strawberries, right? Well, if you were just to say, I have a basket of oranges, you lose a lot of information. Or even if you just say basket of fruit, but that's not as good of an example. It's more like saying I have a basket of oranges, because what you're doing is, because they're all fruits, even though they have different flavors and attributes, you're still labeling them the same bloody thing. That's what people do when they insert the words that don't belong here. You're just causing confusion, and you're actually removing information from the picture. So I wish people would just use the word little horn. So this is why I won't insert the word Antichrist here, because there's nothing about this image that indicates Antichrist based on the attributes that are in the context where the word Antichrist is actually used. Anyway, moving on. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and some of the stars to the ground. Reminds me of the king of Babylon. Lucifer, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Without its, So this is just a way of saying lifting themselves up high, I believe. Ego, elevating themselves above even God or even authorities that are above them. Let's see, it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, Jesus, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away. So here we have, a tie-in to what we covered yesterday regarding the daily sacrifices. So this is the chapter before what we read yesterday. This is Daniel 8. Yesterday we read Daniel 9. Daniel 9 talking about bringing an end to sin, bringing an end to the transgression, those six things. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the hosts, and by him. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of people think, okay, so this is him going into the temple of God as God, showing himself that he is God, because he's exalting himself as high as the host. Well, it doesn't mean that. Don't assume that, and don't insert that into the scripture here, because it's just going to make things confusing. So basically, he thinks he's above all. Obviously some type of a big shot. You know what I mean? All right. But because Jesus is king, Jesus is the prince of the host, right? And by him the daily sacrifices were taken away. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down because of transgression. An army was given over to the horn, that's the little horn, to oppose the daily sacrifices. See, this actually makes me lean more towards the Romans 8 scripture where it talks, is it Romans 8 or Romans 6? I always get those mixed up. Romans 8, I think it is, where we are living sacrifices. This makes me think that this end time little horn opposing those who belong to God, right? Those who spend their time, who sacrifice their lives and energy, to spread the kingdom, right? So an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices. And I think this could also tie into, where you have the beast who's given authority to trample the saints or to persecute the saints for 42 months. So I'm leaning towards that, the saints and their work is what is the daily sacrifices. Just an assumption, but I think you can kind of see why I would think that. And he casts truth down to the ground. He did all of this and prospered. And then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation? The giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot. And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary will be cleansed. I read today, does this say something different in the King James? Whoops, where'd it go? Where's the 2,300? Understanding, but not by his own. Let's see, no, that's too far. Here it is. Until 2,300 days. All right, says the same thing in King James and New King James. I read somewhere today that some interpretations of this, and the reason I bring this up is because one of the things that really eludes me in all of our timeline and observations is the day counts. I don't know if we've gotten any day count like really nailed down yet. There's a lot of interpretations of the 1,260 days, the 1,290 days, the 42 months, the 3.5 years, the time and a half of times. There's a lot of speculations, but I don't think we have them all perfectly aligned. It's almost like we have a pile of puzzle pieces off to the side that we're still trying to figure out how they fit in the puzzle. But I heard something interesting about this 2,300 days. One of the interpretations of this is that the days here is referring to evenings. It's referring to evenings and mornings, and that some interpretations of this, and maybe it's based on some other texts. I just learned about this today, so I don't know the basis of this. But one of the interpretations is this is actually 3.5 years. More specifically, 3 point. So it'd be so if you were to take 2,300 and divide it in half, it equals out to be about 3.2 years or something like that, 1,250 days or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but today was the first I'd actually heard of even that interpretation of it. So I'm going to look more into that because the day counts is one of those things that eludes me. And the reason is because there's kind of an overwhelming number of variables to where, do you take the day counts to mean years? The 42 months really mean 42 months? When do you start counting? Those kind of things. Because I have yet to see from when we have an actual established start date of something where we apply a day count to it, it doesn't seem to land on anything of note. Case in point on here, we've got, different candidates for the end of the 1,260 days. So if we were to start from the opening of seal number 4A, which would be October 7th, 2023, 1,260 days lands on March 20th. If we start 7 days later, it's March 27th. Or if we start from when Donald won the election, because there's a precedent for actually starting for that count, because seal number 2 started when the Electoral College declared Joe Biden to be the president. So this would be the equivalent of that. So do you start counting from that? That would end on 4/19/2028. Or do you start from the time when both Donald Trump and Elon Musk started working together because the two witnesses prophesy for 1,260 days? If that's the case, then the end date is July 3rd, 2028. So the numbers count is one of the biggest puzzle pieces that elude me, just because I haven't nailed anything down yet that's just like, oh, that's definitely it. Like the Great Tribulation is becoming that, to where it's just like I'm more and more convinced that the Great Tribulation starts February 17th, 2026. But these day counts, man, they elude me. So yeah, so that was a new thing I heard, is that this actually represents evenings and days. So this is the expansion of evenings and days. I don't know. It could have just been a stupid interpretation, because to me, when I read 2,300 days, I mean, there's very little room for interpretation in my mind there. But man, if I can find something to make it fit, that would be great. Anyway, sorry, sideline. All right, so Gabriel interprets this vision. So anytime that someone has a vision and it's, of things that don't naturally track, and you have an angel or a messenger interpret that vision, that gives us a lot of powerful data to work with for understanding future prophecies. So this section of scripture where you got Gabriel helping Daniel understand the vision is immensely powerful, because the definitions of the things in these visions is important later on. So here we go. Then it happened when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning, that suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So he came near me, and I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand, son of man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. So this refers to us right now. We know we're in the time of the end because of the Revelation 12 sign. In the book of Revelation 12, 1 and 2, we know we're in the end time because this sign is so unique that it only happens really one time. There is another time that it kind of happens. And, there is some circumstantial information about this one that this could be relevant. So this was, no, that's Jesus's birthday. Where is it? Going the wrong way. This one. So 830, 439. This is the only other one that is kind of close, but it's really not. There's some anomalies here. But this was really close to when let's I can't remember. I think it's the actually I don't remember. There may be I may be thinking of negative four. I'm thinking of 430 BC. So yeah, there's nothing associated with this one. But this one, it doesn't even really perfectly fit. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, so because of this, we know we're in the time of the end. So when Gabriel is interpreting this vision, it directly applies to us right now, I think. Understand, Son of Man, the vision refers to the time of the end. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and stood me upright. And he said, "Look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation, for at the appointed time the end shall be. The ram which you saw having two horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia." So there we have a definition of what horns are. They're kings. "And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece." So you've got a beast or an animal that is associated with a country. And we still do this today. We associate countries with animals. The United States with the bald eagle, Australia with the kangaroo, Russia with the bear. You get the point. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the four that stood up in its place, four kingdoms. So here you have horns that also represent kingdoms. So there's a dual meaning there, which is one of the things that makes understanding Revelation 13 complicated, because you have beasts, heads, and horns. And idiots like to clump all those together and go, first beast, Antichrist, like a caveman. Sorry. Four kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise. A lot of people want to say that's Trump, but it ain't. Having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Trump doesn't do that. Through his cunning, he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. People would like to think Trump does that, but he really doesn't. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. Trump does the opposite. He's making people rich. He shall even rise against the prince of princes. So this is somebody who thinks they're hot shit, who probably doesn't support Yeshua. But he shall be broken without human means. And the vision of the evenings and mornings, which was told, is true. Oh, this is where they get the evenings and mornings, the 2300 days. Yeah, okay, I get that. So in the vision of the evenings and mornings, which was told is true, therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. All right, so now I want to show you what the prompt is that I gave Grok about this. Because if you go about this, if you just tell Grok so I did this one way. The first time I asked it, if Daniel 8 is referring to today, then who is the little horn? Which of the world leader fits the attributes? If you prompt it this way, you're going to get all the bogus interpretations and all the conspiracy BS. Don't do this. It's not true. So here's how I prompted. Let's see. Nope. I prompted it again after this. Here's what I prompted. Okay. Please ignore modern interpretations. The thing about prophecy, about the future, everything is a guess until the future comes. Also, do not insert words which are not in the text, like Antichrist. The attributes from the context where that word is actually used do not match Daniel 7 or 8. The primary attributes of Antichrist being deny the Father and the Son, deny Jesus is the Messiah, deny Jesus came in the flesh, are not seen in Daniel, so let's not make stupid assumptions like that. All right. Using only what is actually written in Daniel 8 and what Gabriel defines, extrapolate who the little horn could be today. Do not include people like Trump. He does not blaspheme God or lift himself up. Only include world rulers from the possible regions. And this is the important part right here. Trump is from Scotland. He's got nothing to do with the regions where this prophecy takes place, which is Greece, Turkey, Iran, Syria, Egypt. Come on, people. So possible regions who fit the actual attributes written in the text. So this time it came up with really interesting potential fits. So the first one is the Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is the president of Turkey. Turkey, ancient Asia Minor, part of the Lysimascus and later Seleucid. I'll get that wrong. From the Seleucid Attalid divisions. So textual fit, expansion towards southeast, military operations in Syria, Iraq, Libya, influences in Azerbaijan. They just joined the Board of Peace. Magnifies himself in heart to prince of hosts, positions as leader to the broader Islamic world, extends presidential powers via policies. In other words, he gives himself power. Fierce countenance, authoritarian rule, suppressing opposition, understands dark sentences, causes craft to prosper, cunning diplomatic maneuvers, alliances shifting between powers. Power not by own. He relies on the military mandates, foreign alliances like Russia and Iran, and destroys by peace, and involved in peace boards for Gaza while supporting anti-Israel stances. See, these are the things that we should be paying attention to. Calling for alliances against perceived threats, because this is persecuting the holy people and the saints. Calling for alliances against perceived threats, prosper practices, maintains long-term rule amid regional influence growth, destroys mighty holy people, interventions in Syria, Iraq affecting populations, opposition to Israel as pleasant land, proxy. All right, so that's number one. Really good candidate. Yeah, Fury says, we are noticing Turkey in that context and have been expecting something along that line because of Turkey's alignment against Israel. Yes, good point. All right, next one. This one is the one that I think is interesting because we're going to watch this video that Yisrael Goldstein posted because the Prince of Iran, he is not in power. I believe this guy is Ali Khamenei, supreme leader of Iran. Iran is ancient Mesopotamia / Persia, incorporated into the Seleucid division. So expansion towards the southeast, proxies in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, targeting Israel as the pleasant land. Magnifies himself in heart to prince of hosts, exalts as the supreme religious authority. He is seen as an infallible guide. Fierce countenance. Oh, you can't see my mouse over here. Fierce countenance. Shoot, lost my spot. Fierce countenance. Harsh suppression of protests. Yeah, it just killed like 33,000 people. Understands dark sentences. Causes craft to prosper. Strategic use of proxies. Deceptive diplomacy. Power not by own. Relies on IRGC. Foreign alliances like Russia and China, destroys by peace, supports resistance networks under peace rhetoric while enabling attacks, prospers in practices, endures amid regional axis building, destroys mighty holy people, actions against Israel via proxies, internal destruction of dissenters, stands up against the prince, opposes entities tied to hosts. Yep. And then finally, we have Ahmed al-Shara from Syria. Expansion towards southeast, consider consolidation, control post overthrow. Potential pushes into borders, magnifies himself in heart to Prince of Hosts. Rose from jihadist leader to national ruler. Rebrands as moderate while holding power. Fierce countenance, history of brutal civil wars tactics. Understands dark sentences, causes craft to prosper. Shifted from Al Qaeda, affiliate to diplomatic figure via cunning rebranding. Power not by own, he's backed by Turkey and rebel coalitions, and destroys by peace, halts offensives for stability while building alliances, prospers and practices recent rise to power after overthrow, destroys mighty holy people, overthrew prior regime, potential anti-Israel stance. So these, I'm not saying that these are it, but these are way better candidates than most people come to because they just don't think properly because they're confused by a basket of oranges and not looking at all the fruit. It's a pretty good analogy. All right, now with that, now we have an understanding. I really want to focus on Turkey. No, Iran. I want to focus on Iran because that is what's really in the news today. And we're sending a lot of military over there. And let's see, what's the date? We're like 20 days away from February 17th. So yeah, I think Iran, we should be paying close attention to what's going on over there, because it would seem that seems to be pivotal to Great Tribulation, for when they say peace and safety, and possibly the rise of this little horn in the end times, like it says in Daniel 8. So let us go over here and watch this.
That were shot by military weapons. They are chasing them now in hospitals, finishing the job of wounded people, raping women in their homes. The amount of brutality that has happened has been unprecedented, but the resolve of my compatriot is still there. It started from the bazaar in Tehran and quickly spread to the four corners of Iran. Millions of people came out. Millions of people started protesting death to the dictator, asking for their liberty.
Excitement on the horizon in what's happening in Iran. Let's hear from the most prominent exiled, Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah, the head of Iran, who has been exiled. Let's listen to him as he shares with us of what's really happening on the ground in live time.
So you have called on the Iranian people to rise up and oppose this regime. A lot of Iranians are doing that. A lot of them are being killed by the regime. Are you confident that this uprising will work?
Jake, first and foremost, I must say that unlike previous campaigns, and as a continuation of it, this time the people came to the streets because they have had it with this regime. It's a true revolution. But the regime, unfortunately, has started waging war against its own citizenry. Defenseless people that were shot by military weapons. They are chasing them now in hospitals, finishing the job of wounded people, raping women in their homes. The amount of brutality that has happened has been unprecedented, but the resolve of my compatriot is still there. It started from the bazaar in Tehran and quickly spread to the four corners of Iran. Millions of people came out. Millions of people started protesting death to the dictator, asking for their liberty. And this is a movement that will ultimately succeed. We had a stumbling block, which was the regime panicking, cutting us from the world by shutting down the internet, making communication impossible. But the news has trickled out. And as of yesterday, when I spoke to a few of our political prisoners, they were telling us the amount of casualties that we thought would be not as much as was originally reported, but Tehran alone had over 15,000 people killed, and I think across the country is well over 20,000, maybe even more than that.
Obviously, it's the fault of the regime.
I think this is probably why the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet is associated with the Al-Aqsa flood. Iran was supposed to be one of the big forces, along with Hamas, that was supposed to go in, but Hamas went in early, so the full destruction didn't happen, which I believe lines up with Revelation 12 that says that the dragon cast out, or was it the serpent, cast out a flood after the woman, but the earth helped the woman and swallowed up the flood. That seems to be the case with the Al-Aqsa flood. It was intended to be complete, total annihilation, but Hamas seemed to have gone in early, and therefore it only resulted in 1,200 deaths and 250 hostages. A lot more deaths in the long run as a result of that. But that initiated that period of time of seal number 4, which there's just been such a massive amount of death that we don't even know about, death that has been hidden from people because they don't have internet. Nobody has internet to be able to share these things. This seems to be, I think that's probably part of how the daily sacrifices could potentially being removed. And I know a lot of people are looking for this guy to go into a temple and declare himself God and take away sacrifices. You got to keep in mind, there is no temple right now, and there are no daily sacrifices in that regards. So if we're seeing things happen, it's prudent to evaluate if there's, could be a fulfillment that deviates from what we may have assumed was going to happen. It's just good practice to pay attention, because that's what Jesus told us to do. He said, be watchful.
And we all hope that the Iranian people get the government they deserve and democracy and freedom. Obviously, it's the fault of the regime, all these deaths, but do you feel any responsibility having called for this uprising?
Well, they called me to step in. Millions of people chanted my name, asking for my leadership, for my return. And it is in support of the movement that we called for maximum togetherness so that they are not spread as a crowd. And it started pushing back elements with the regime. As a result of it, we started to see some initial refusal to go back to work. There were members of the police force who didn't show up to work, some military elements. Even the regime killed a few policemen who refused to engage with the people. So we already see the momentum shifting. The regime panicked and as a result created this blackout. But the momentum might have slowed down in terms of people be able to continue beyond the street. But we know that once the regime is hopefully targeted in terms of its force of repression being neutralized, if indeed, as President Trump announced, there will be some retaliation for them doing what they did to the people, that will give people another opportunity to then finish the job at the end. People are committed to do that. Millions of people have died. And the biggest message that they wanted me to convey to our viewers is that they are not fighting this fight for themselves. They are fighting for humanity and liberty all around the world. That's the Iranian people who are, unlike this regime, has always been anti-Western, anti-American principle. Iranians want to have the best of relationship with America. And we had it before.
And you know that there are a lot of Iranians who hate the regime who are also critics of yours. And I want to give you an opportunity to respond to some of their criticism. One of them is that you say you want to unite the Iranian people, but you weren't able to keep a coalition of like-minded Iranians together at Georgetown. That group quickly disbanded. Why do you think you're going to be able to unite the country?
Well, first of all, you have right causes and the wrong players. But when I was in Munich 3 months ago, we had a conference that had the widest spread and diversity of representation of its kind as part of the unity movement. We had people from the left, people from the right, Republicans, monarchists, socialists, representative of ethnic groups, representative of religious minorities, athletes, artists, that were all gathered there. And the principle is very simple, Jake. What are we united on in terms of the core principles?
Ending the regime.
But there are 4 key principles that you said like-minded. How do we define it? First and foremost is Iran territorial integrity, which is very important. Number 2 is separation of church from state as a prerequisite to democracy. Number 3 is, of course, equality under the law of all citizens and individual liberties. And all of this so we can conduct free elections, so it's the Iranian people who determine the outcome. I'm stepping in as a leader of transition at their call. My job is to make sure that we can see this through. We have a plan for the post-regime collapse to stabilize the situation, allow maximum defections, keep the most of the bureaucracy intact so the country continues functioning, and then prepare the grounds for the election of a constitutional assembly where whatever opinions people may have, they have a chance to debate it and be presented with a constitutional project and then be ratified by referendum.
On that matter of continuity in government, last summer, July, you announced that more than 50,000 officials from the military, from the Iranian government, had submitted to a Google form that you set up that they wanted to defect from the current regime. Did you verify those numbers? Do those names, is the number still 50,000? And where have those defectors gone? What happened to them?
It's more than that. 2 days before the internet shutdown, we have over 100,000 people, new applicants to a platform that we had created a few months before, adding to the numbers that had already started joining. Among them, you find members of the military, paramilitary, police forces, but also a lot of people who are in the civil bureaucracy, working in ministries and so on and so forth. Diplomats and others, and we're beginning to see signs of more and more people, refusing to go back to work or literally defecting. It is very important because it's part of our process. You see, one of the lessons learned from de-Baathification in Iraq was really a bad example of how you manage a change of regime. And in the case of Iran, you don't have the problem you saw happen there in the de-Baathification. We are trying to be inclusive as much as possible of all those who can survive regime change and have a place in the future, except for the people who have their hands soiled with the blood of the Iranians, and they will have account in the court of justice at some point. But the majority of them can survive that change and have a place for them tomorrow.
So lastly, sir, President Trump's position vis-a-vis the Iranian people, he keeps threatening that he'll take action if the Iranian regime keeps killing innocent Iranians. They keep killing innocent Iranians. At one point he said, I was told the killing stopped, but it hasn't.
Unfortunately, it hasn't.
Do you think what
So just so you know, the population in Iran is estimated to be around 92 to 93 million people.
he's doing, his position, separate and apart from the nuclear strikes, has been helpful? Is it beneficial?
It's the expectation of a nation, because a lot of people took courage in the words of a president who said, I'm not going to be another Barack Obama. I'm not going to throw you under the bus. And people took that very seriously. And in fact, a lot of people now are hoping that in this totally unfair conflict where the regime is massacring them and they have no choice to defend themselves because they're unarmed, something is going to tilt the balance in their favor. And the best way to do that and save lives at the same time is to strike the regime when they're the most vulnerable, and at the same time, they're instrument of repression. We're talking IRGC, we're talking instances that is collectively their instrument of repression, but there can also be additional aspect to that, economic isolation of the regime. And I think a lot of governments now in Europe are considering bringing even more sanctions on the regime. This is a time to act. I think the expectation of the people who have bravely gone to the street, many of them have died, that they haven't died in vain. They expect the world this time, beyond just condemnation, behind resolution, actually take steps to put the pressure on the regime.
So just to be clear, you're saying that you think it's time for the U.S. and the West to act beyond just words with economic sanctions that are tougher, but also military strikes against the Revolutionary Guard.
There's no other way to help unarmed people when they're facing this level of...
I kind of wonder, it makes me wonder if there wasn't some kind of an incursion with Iran, if that wouldn't also cause sparks with China and Russia.
Brutality that the regime has exerted against them. The only chance is to see a cavalry that arrives and we can hold the fort up to a point. At some point, we need to get that air cover, and that will change the balance in favor of the people. Okay. Hopefully, Iranians will be able to liberate themselves.
All right, Reza Pahlavi, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
I'm sorry.
Words.
What an amazing interview, and thank you so much. It's been so many years in the making since Mr., as they known as Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, has been anticipating and waiting for this moment to happen. Since 1979, when his father, the Shah, was exiled, Iran went from living in total liberty and freedoms into total captivity. 90 million Iranians lost their human rights and their religious freedom. When this deadly regime took over, the radical Islamists took over Iran, and they began executing by the thousands for minor infractions on religious basis. People no longer had religious freedom. And this is something that does not belong in the 21st century. Religious freedom is a right for every human being to be able to practice whatever religion they chose. Religion is about faith. It's about being committed to God and being godly and acting godly.
Yeah.
Religion has no place when it comes to taking another person's rights away, or by persecuting, or worse, killing people in the name of religion.
Yeah,
And
amen.
that is what has been happening since 1979. When we listen to the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, there is a sense of optimism that he has, that he's hoping for. He did mention that prior to the outage of the internet, there were thousands of those who joined the movement, both from the government, from the army, and from other sectors. And this is something new that has shown that the homegrown opposition to the government is growing stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
But what's happening in Iran, the peril of the Iranian people that are there, it's not just about the 90 million Iranians that are suffering from this tyranny, but it's also the rest of the world. We now know Iran's reach was not just regional in the Middle East,
That's right.
but it has its stretch throughout the world.
Yeah.
It's,
This is the reason why I'm bringing attention to this, is because it feels like, given everything we're able to observe, it seems like, really does seem like this could be the Great Tribulation. It's so close. So many pieces are set in position to where, effectively the entire world has been invaded by Islam. And it seems as though they're just waiting for the go sign. And that seems to be like it might be the Great Tribulation. I think we'll probably have less here in the United States. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. Honestly, we don't even know how many people came into our country during the Biden administration. We just know that it was an innumerable amount. They estimate between, 10 and 25 million, or 10 to 30 million if you want to use round numbers. Which, there's 300 million people in the United States. That's 10% of the population. 10% can do a lot of damage if it's allowed to go unchecked. So, just one of the things to be mindful of, to be prepared for.
as far as Australia, when a synagogue was bombed, the Australian government expelled the Iranian consulate because we found ties from Iran to the bombing of the synagogue in Australia.
Yep.
During the last 2 years of the Gaza war, when the mantras, the rhetoric was being allowed to be chanted on the streets of cities, on the college campuses, whether it was about free Palestine from the river to the sea, or the globalization of the Intifada. Well, yes, the Intifada is now globalized, not only in a synagogue that was firebombed in Australia, but look what just happened on December 14, 2025, the first night of Hanukkah in Bondi Beach, Sydney, Australia. This is very close and personal to myself personally, because the event that happened on Bondi Beach on the first night of Hanukkah was an event that my brother-in-law and my youngest sister hosted for the last 40 years. Being that Australia is always the first to welcome in the New Year's, always the first to welcome in new seasons, new holidays, because of their time zone, they were always the first. Oh, every New Year's, the Opera House fireworks are the first to usher in, herald in the New Year's. So my brother-in-law and youngest sister always hosted the very first Hanukkah candle. Their son-in-law, Rabbi Eli Schlenger, who was his assistant and administrator, was putting together this beautiful program. A large majority of the attendees were former refugees of the former Soviet Union. And that is my brother-in-law, who was born in Russia, was appointed to be the rabbi of the Russian Jewish community to help them get resettled in Sydney, Australia, that he has done triumphantly, beautifully, in the course of the last 40 years. So the majority of the people that were there were those that fled Russia because of the persecution that they were subjected to because of their religion. And they came to Australia to feel safe and to feel secure. That was true until December 14th.
Yeah, the thing about Australia, known for having one of the strictest gun control governments in the world, they really are a nanny state. When I would visit Australia, I would often get up early in the morning, 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, to go swimming at Bondi Beach. And you could be walking down alleys in America, you'd get jumped. There'd be the ghetto. So there was definitely a real sense of safety in Australia because of the way their government works. However, during the times of pressure and stress, worst place in the world to be because of that. So, like what they did during COVID is a crime against humanity. I mean, they literally were going into, from what I understand, they were literally going into pet shops and just killing all the animals so people wouldn't have a reason to go into the pet shops. And there was a severe lockdown. They were putting people in camps. It was really bad. You're completely powerless there. And then you have this shooting on Bondi Beach. Why do Islamists have the guns and the people don't? So, yeah, shame on you, Australia.
2025, when they gathered and getting ready to light the very first candle, heralding in the Hanukkah season of 2025. The symbol of Hanukkah is a symbol of 2,000 years ago. It was the very first religious war that happened on the soil of Israel. Yes, the Jewish people were living in Israel 2,000 years ago. That's years before the great-grandfather of Muhammad was even conceived.
Yep.
Yes, the Jewish people are the indigenous people, the natural people who lived in Israel for thousands of years. As they were getting ready this year to light the menorah, a father and a son, Islamists, Muslim, devout, ISIS-inspired, took two heavy, very powerful rifles and shot and killed as many people as they tried to. 15 people were shot dead, including my very own nephew, Rabbi Eli Schlinger, 41 years old, leaving behind a widow, my niece, and 5 beautiful children, the youngest being 2 months old.
Very sad.
This is the result of the Islamist, of radical Islam, a jihadist that is born and bred on the soil of Iran.
Yep.
This is the war that we are up against. And this is why it is so important for the world to come together and support the counter-revolutionaries who are trying so hard. Now, the one big question we ought to ask ourselves.
The other interesting thing about Iran, so in the end time, so in Revelation 17, it talks about the harlot which sits on 7 hills. Both Rome and, as I understand it, Iran have 7 hills that could fit that description.
Where are the protests in the streets? Iran just massacred close to 30,000 innocent civilians.
Wow.
Where's the world outcry? Why isn't the United Nations gathering together and drawing up condemnations? Why aren't there protests in the streets? Why isn't the Harbor Bridge?
You notice Trump doesn't annihilate the protesters in the streets. Just want to point that out, the differences of if anybody wants to leave the U.S. to go to some place with less protections, they're allowed to even carry guns to the riots and to the protests in the United States. And we don't have a government that goes in and slaughters 30,000 people. That is a very large number of people.
Sydney, packed with thousands and thousands of people chanting against the Iranian government for massacring 30,000 Iranians, innocent Iranians. Where are the encampments on the campus? Where are the flotillas? Where's Greta? Where's everybody? How come it's quiet? Why is there such silence in the world versus mass protests, at least equally to what happened during the Gaza war? You know what the answer is? Because these aren't Israelis.
Hmm.
It's not the Jews. Only when the Jews are fighting for their survival are they to be called all these names of genociders, baby killers, as we have heard over the last 2 years. Ask yourself the question, doesn't it make sense to you now? Why is there no outcry about these 30,000 innocent Iranians that was just killed? And that is what anti-Semitism is all about.
Hmm.
And this is exactly what's happening right now in Iran. We have an opportunity now, the free world has an opportunity now to help topple this regime and get rid of this radical Islamists whose only mission in life is, their mission statement is death to America, death to Israel, death to the West.
Yep.
And we need to believe them because that is what they believe. And we have learned from history when your enemy wants to kill you, they mean it.
Yeah.
Well, now we have a chance to challenge that. We see what happened with the blackout of the internet. Sorry. And we see what happens with 90 million people who are basically held in one huge concentration camp by this regime. They deserve to be freed. They deserve to have their religious rights restored and the human rights restored. Before 1979, these people were living a free life. But those of us who know, who have been living in Iran prior to 1979, know that their relations with Israel and the West were as tight as ever. They were allies. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, whether he's going to be the next leader of a democracy and will be voted in with a true democracy or not, but he made a pledge. He made it very clear that when Iran gets its liberties back and a democratic government is once again installed and leading the world with a democracy, then the very first thing he wants to do is to renew the relations with Israel and the West and America.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be an incredible 180
That'd be great.
from the chanting that goes on now, death to America, death to Israel, of having diplomatic relations with Israel and becoming an ally of Israel and the United States? This is attainable and it's doable. We can make this happen. We need to support those protesters, the anti-revolutionary. We need to be there for them and do whatever we can to help them. Those 30,000 who just got killed in the last 3 weeks, their deaths cannot be in vain.
And I'll also add, so you've got 30,000 in Iran, but also there's 30,000 who die in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. According to Donald Trump, he keeps floating that number out there that it's 7 to 10,000 people per week are dying. So there's a lot of death going on around the world. If you're not going through tribulation yourself, count yourself lucky, because right now things are really escalating. And I wish I could be optimistic, like he is, that things are going to get better from this point forward. But given what we know, February 17th, 2026 is going to be a very revealing day. If nothing happens and peace begins to escalate, great. But it seems as though, given what's going on around the world, that we could be looking at an event starting on February 17th that unfortunately takes us in the other direction. Potentially the start of the Great Tribulation. And if you haven't seen the videos from this from the last week or so, the reason we believe that is we're, according to the data, according to the events that have happened on the earth that match up with signs in the heavens and what's written in the scripture, we're in seal number 4. That basically started with the Al-Aqsa flood. And seal number 5 is the conclusion of seal number 4. But if you read in Matthew, if you come over here and you read in Matthew, So this is seal number 4. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter. This was very likely the Al-Aqsa flood. There's a lot of parallels with that. You might be asking yourself, how is that the abomination of desolation? Well, Luke 21 gives us additional insights. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, know that its desolation is near. And there is seal number 4. Seal number 5, we're assuming that this is seal number 5. It's not clearly labeled as seal number 5. But the fact that this right here, the second coming, for as lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the vultures will be gathered. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heavens, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds. That seems to be seal number 6. If you come in here and you read about seal number 6, and I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair. The moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to earth as fig trees drop their late figs, shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island moved out of its place. So there you got seal number 6. So you got seal number 4 here, seal number 6 here. It stands to reason that this is seal number 5. For then there will be great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. I believe this is indicative of nuclear war. You've got the nuclear power players at odds here: Russia, China, the United States. It wouldn't surprise me if Russia and China aren't involved with Iran, if they don't support the Ayatollah's agenda, and things don't pop off here in February. I could totally see that's where we could be going there. No flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. So this tells me that even if it is nuclear war, we'll probably still have computers, because I imagine that there's still going to be artificial intelligence deception during this time. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, probably via YouTube, TikTok, the like, if possible, even the elect. See, I've told you beforehand. See, this comes from Jesus. This is the whole reason we're doing this, is because this is a callback to John 14:29. See, I've told you these things before they come to pass, so that when they do happen, you will believe. He says it here. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. I almost wonder if this could be dangerous. If they don't try to, and this could be like an Islamic tactic, to where if they try and use some kind of deception to get crowds of people into places where they can attack them. So remember, if there's potentially 10% of our population could be invaders that intend to harm Americans. One of the tricks they could use is try and get people to gather together in different places in order to attack them. So I could see that as being a part of that. I hope I'm wrong, but we do seem to be on this timeline. And as terrible as all of this sounds, you have to remember these things must come to pass. And the point is, because what we read yesterday in Daniel 9, we're sealing up. Do I have Daniel 9 on here anymore? Here, we'll go here. This is the point. This is what's happening. Let's see, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 70 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome times. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, done, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. This already happened, I believe. And we're just bringing a conclusion to this part. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. You know, the Jewish people talk about their constant struggle with tribulation and desolation. Until the end, the desolations are determined. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate. I kind of think that we might be here because the eclipse that happens on February 17th, which marks this date as being a I guess you could say high watch time for seal number 5. It's in Aquarius. So Aquarius is the guy who's got the yoke where he can balance 2 buckets of water, and he's pouring out a bucket of water. So that can be interpreted as Holy Spirit, a lot of different ways. But one of the ways of looking at it is pouring out judgment. So the fact that the word pouring is used here makes me think. Which is determined is poured out on the desolate. So it makes me think that that's about where we are. So we're really close to the end. So like all this stuff that's happening around the world is bringing an end to sin and the transgression. And the good news is we're very likely going to see Yeshua in 2026. I mean, by all accounts, it's looking that way. And you might be wondering, well, what about the rest of the seals and the rest of the timeline? Don't worry. There's a lot more that still needs to happen. I mean, all this stuff continues to go probably until about 2030, 2031. It's just in seal number 5 and seal number 6, this seems to be the Great Tribulation. This seems to be when the earth rotates. That's if you got time tonight, I would recommend going to, let me go get that URL for you. It's called disastercycle.film. If you want to watch that disaster cycle documentary from Ben Davidson, this is definitely worth your time. I believe this is talking about seal number 6. I don't think they're right on their timeline because they're still projecting 30 years. And by all accounts, it could be as early as 2026. Thank you for watching this clip from the Two Witnesses Live. Catch us Monday through Friday at 4:30. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you all there.